There are some disturbing posts on social media. ISIS supporters celebrating the mass shooting yesterday with the hashtag #AmericaBurning. A new study shows that ISIS radicalization and recruitment is surging in the U.S. Since March 2014, 71 individuals have been arrested on terrorist-related activities, 56 this year. In fact, it's the most arrests in this category for any year since September 11, 2001. According to an FBI estimate, there are potentially thousands of people living in the U.S. who support ISIS, the vast majority of whom are permanent residents or U.S. citizens. Former CIA military analyst Tara Mahler is back with me now. Tara, what do we do in this new world order when some of the people who sympathize with ISIS have American passports?
Well, it makes it very difficult. Not only do they have American passports, they're here already in many cases. They're not necessarily even traveling to Syria to get training. They're not traveling overseas. They're being inspired through social media or through other sorts of ties with groups overseas. And I think that's one of the main differences now. Through social media, ISIS has been very successful in broadcasting its message around the globe in multiple languages, including to those here in the United States.
So I was in Paris after the November 13th attacks, and many people there are saying the social media outreach is a lot more powerful and effective in recruiting than even local radical imams. I want to ask you about the states, though. It seems like New York and Minnesota are the two states that have had the most arrests. Do you take that to mean that police is more vigilant in these states, or is there more risk in those two?
Well, I think New York, obviously, and major cities, New York, Washington, D.C., those have always been under the radar, high under the radar of law enforcement officials, and there have always been targets for terrorism, not just ISIS, but in the past as well. And we've seen, terrorism activity in those major cities. Minnesota, obviously a little bit different, not as high profile as New York or Washington, but one of the things that law enforcement looks at when trying to assess areas that might be at risk is where there are populations of significant that have been potentially radicalized or where they think they've been radicalized. So it could be a combination of both more activity going on and perhaps more vigilance, but New York has always been at the top of the list. That's not really so surprising.
Tara, if you could say one thing to the President of the United States about protecting citizens, what would you say?
I think really the key aspect here in the situation is really for law enforcement officials and the CIA to be putting the intelligence pieces together. So I think what the President needs to do is to make sure that we're recruiting top people to the intelligence community, the law enforcement community, and that those individuals are able to share information to make sure that these attacks are stopped before they can take place. Obviously, there are things that need to happen with the fight against ISIS overseas, but for these homegrown small cell plots, it's really going to boil down, especially if somebody's already here or an American, to the law enforcement, domestic law enforcement here at home in conjunction with intelligence sharing and, security apparatus here in the homeland.
Information sharing, coordination. Tara, thank you. Former CIA military analyst Tara Mahler. New York